Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Gita Gyan level 2. So we will continue. We will start with the prayers, Guru Pranam and Mangalacharan prayers. And we begin by dedicating this presentation to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshacharini Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vikna Vinasha Narasimha iti namini Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayatim Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarina Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tat Sat. So Hare Krishna. So we are continuing with our Gita Mahatmya, the conversation between Lord Shiva and Parvati. So now we are coming to chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita. So Sri Shiva said, "O Parvati, kindly hear from me the glories of the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita with the greatest attention." So the story begins, Lord Shiva says, in Simhal Dweep. Simhal Dweep is a place, and it's a part of somewhere in India. I'm not sure exactly where it is. I couldn't find it, and I couldn't find any references. So probably it could be somewhere, maybe towards the Pakistan area or Afghanistan area. Could have been that area. It doesn't really come out in the Google. But anyway, in Simhal Dweep, there was a king of the name Vikram Betwal. So this king, one day, when he was going to the forest for hunting, so sometimes kings do that, Kshatriyas, and they do this to sharpen their weapon skills, because Kshatriyas, they need to be able to fight in wars and protect dharma. So in order to do that, sometimes they need to be able to see blood without getting disturbed. and they must be able to practice their weaponry. So for that purpose, they go to the forest sometimes to hunt. So this king, he was going, his name is Vikram Bittuwa, and he was going to the forest for hunting, and he took his son and 2 hunting dogs along with him. So when he reached the forest, he spotted one rabbit, and then he released the dog to chase the rabbit. So the dog was chasing the rabbit was running, and it seems that though the dog was very fast and larger than the rabbit was running so fast that it looked like as if it was almost flying as it was going. So it was running and running, and the dog was chasing, and eventually the rabbit came up, to a beautiful hermitage. You can see a hermitage here. And this hermitage was situated in a very peaceful stretch of forest. And there was a very amazing scene that greeted the king, who was also following this rabbit. So when he came, he saw that in this forest, there was an amazing sense of peace and calm. And indeed, he looked at all the animals, and many of the animals, they were enemies, but here they were existing in peace. For example, the lions, the tigers, the bears, they were all living in peace and harmony together with the deer, the giraffe, the elephant, the monkey. So they were not afraid of each other, and they were not threatening each other. So they were all living peacefully, joyfully, living in this atmosphere. And the king was amazed to see this. But what happened, this rabbit was running further deeper inside the hermitage area. And then it so happens that this hermitage belongs to a great sage. Now, the king doesn't know this, but Lord Shiva is telling Parvati that this hermitage is a very special hermitage, and he was telling Parvati why it was special, why all these animals were living in peace. So this hermitage belonged to the sage called Vatsa, and this Vatsa, the sage, he was a very great personality, and he had perfected his life simply by worshipping the Lord, by reciting the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So by every day, this was his sadhana, and he would be meditating on this and chanting the verses again and again from morning till night. So in this way, he perfected his life. And because he was so purified, and the purity extended from his person throughout the rest of this area as well. And all the other living creatures within about 10-kilometer radius of where this sage Vatsa's hermitage was situated, all of this, within this radius, everything was extremely peaceful. There was no strife, there was no enmity, everything was existing in a very perfect, peaceful situation. Now, near this ashram of Maharaj Vatsa, he lived with one disciple. So there was a disciple of this Vatsa sage, and it so happened that at the time when the rabbit was running and the dog was being chased, and the king was following both this dog and the rabbit and came to this area. So there was this disciple of Vatsa, and he was basically washing his feet. So after walking in some area, he was washing his feet, and he was also chanting the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Being a disciple of the sage, he follows the same vows the sage was following, and by serving the sage and by reciting the Srimad Bhagavad Gita 14th chapter, he was also very, very purified. But anyway, he happened to be washing his feet, and the water which drained from his feet, the wash water, it formed a puddle near the area of the forest, a small puddle. Now, this rabbit was running very fast, jumping and leaping and almost flying, and it ran. And as it ran, it landed on this puddle of water, and it slipped in the mud. And as it slipped in the mud, there was a rock nearby. As it slipped at such speed it was running, it slipped in the water, being completely immersed in this water. It hit the mud, it hit the rock nearby, and it died. And immediately as it died, its soul transformed into a four-armed form of Lord Vishnu. So the same form as Lord Vishnu. So this is in other words, the rabbit attained Sarupya Mukti, having the same form as the Lord. And immediately it arose, and as it arose, a wondrous heavenly aeroplane, Pushpaka Vimana, heavenly aeroplane came, and this aeroplane carried this personality which arose from this rabbit, and it left. And while this was happening, remember the rabbit was being chased by the dog. So the dog was also running behind, and as the dog ran, it also leaped. When the rabbit was running, it also leaped, and as it leapt, it landed also on this watery puddle. And as it landed on this puddle of water, it also slipped. The dog also slipped, and it also skidded and hit its head at that speed on a rock. It became immersed with that water in the puddle and hit the rock. And as it hit the rock, it also died, lost its life, and immediately from its body, the soul came out in a beautiful four-armed form, just like how it happened for the rabbit. And it rose into the sky, and another aeroplane, a heavenly aeroplane, came to carry this personality back to the spiritual world. So it was, and it so happened that the disciple of this sage, the one who had washed his feet, he also happened to see this situation happening. He happened to see the rabbit, he happened to see the dog, and they were both running, how the dog was chasing the rabbit. And before they died, when the dog was chasing the rabbit, he happened to look at them both, and he started laughing. And while he was laughing, the king who was following behind, he happened to note that this disciple was laughing. And right after that, he saw what happened. The rabbit hit the rock and then it died. Then the dog also hit the rock and it died. And then both of them rose up in this wondrous form, and then they left to the spiritual world. So the king was very, very astonished. And he was, of course, overwhelmed, amazed to see such forms happening right in front of his eyes. So then the king came down from his horse, and he went straight to this disciple, and he offered his obeisances to the disciple, and then he told him, "You look like a very wonderful personality. You must have done so much of wondrous sadhana in order for you to have this kind of wondrous glow around you. I don't think you are an ordinary person. And I have just witnessed an amazing thing that happened just now." So the amazing thing that happened, I've never seen anything like this in my life. But yet you are not so astonished, I notice. And I also remember right before this, you were laughing. Can you explain to me, first of all, I have several questions. First of all, can you tell me what is this great place? There's a great sense of calm and peace around here. And also tell me about this area. So then the disciple started replying, this forest is a sacred forest, sacred because my guru, Vatsa, the sage Vatsa, is doing his penance here. And he has conquered his senses completely simply by being engaged in chanting the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And by his blessings and by me serving him, I have also obtained the same grace that I am also chanting the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and by his blessing, I have also attained similar grace. And it is not unusual for people within this area, anyone who dies in this area, generally to go back to the spiritual world. But then the king said, no, but I remember I saw that they actually slipped in the puddle of water. So this water must have come from washing your feet. So you must be a great personality. So please tell me further, what is this? Why did you laugh? What is the purpose you laughed? So then the disciple, he recounted, okay, so actually I could see the past life of this dog and this rabbit. So that's why when I remembered their past life, I couldn't help but laugh at how fate has brought them in this situation. So then he started telling, actually previously in India, in Bharatvarsha, in the state of Kannada, in this area, there once lived in Maharashtra, actually, in Maharashtra area, there once lived a person by the name of Pratudak. Pratudak. He's a Brahmana. And sorry, it's not the person. The town was Pratudak. The town, there's a town in Maharashtra called Pratudak, and the Brahmana who lived there was called Keshava. So this is the Brahmana. So though he was a Brahmana, unfortunately, he was not following the Brahminical principles, and he was a very cruel and greedy man. And to match him, he also had a very loose wife. So his wife's name was Vilobana, and this Vilobana was very unchaste lady. She always enjoyed the company of other men whenever this Keshava Brahmana wasn't around. And Keshava Brahmana, but one day this Keshava Brahmana came to know and caught this wife of his in unfaithful act. So he became extremely angry. Of course, he was a cruel person also by his nature. And he became so angry that he actually became so upset that this Vilobana was afraid. And she started moving backwards and started running away from him. And as he was running away, he started chasing her. And as he was chasing her and she was running away, finally he managed to catch her, and he strangled her and killed her. But what happened was, later on, eventually, due to his many sins and everything, this Keshava Brahmana, he also died in due course of time. And it so happened that in the next life, this Vilobana, the girl which this Brahmana, the wife of this Brahmana, Vilobana, who died, she took birth as a dog. After going through hell and paying for all her sins, she took a birth of a dog. This same dog which was chasing the rabbit. And the rabbit was none other than Keshava Brahmana himself, who also had to pay for his sins. So just see the quirk of fate. How previously he chased her and killed her and caused her death. So now the law of karma is such that now she has gotten a body in which she could chase him, and he was running for his life. And then she caused his death. So that's why when I realized this, I started laughing. So that's what the Brahmana was, the disciple was telling the king. So anyway, Lord Shiva continues the story. Sri Shiva said, after hearing the glories of the 14th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, so he realized the king realized, of course, the disciple was also telling the king. So actually, my Guru Maharaj became purified simply by listening to the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and I also received the same grace. And because I was faithful to serve my Guru, and I was always reciting these verses, right? Whatever that touches me, it also becomes purified. So this water which washed my feet, it happened to touch this rabbit and the dog. And because they touched this and they were immersed in this water, and that was the last thing that happened to them before they left, before they died. So therefore, they were also purified and completely became liberated. So this is the glory of one who is able to chant the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So after hearing this, the king, King Vikram Betal, also realized how wondrous this situation is, and he also accepted Diksha, or spiritual master, from this disciple. And the disciple said, no, I cannot initiate you. My Guru Maharaj is still here. You must take initiation from my Guru Maharaj. So then this king also became a disciple of this sage Vatsa, and the sage also initiated him into this chanting of the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So the king also continuously chanted the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, recited it all the time. And in due course, he also purified himself, his consciousness. And when he finally gave up that body, he went to Vaikuntha, where he was able to engage eternally in the service of the lotus feet. So this king, he developed bhakti, he developed devotional service due to his activities of reciting the Bhagavad Gita chapter 14. And in this way, he was able to eternally reside in the spiritual plane. So that's the story of this chapter 14, the glory of this Bhagavad Gita chapter 14. Right, so chapter 14 is known as the three modes of material nature. And its Sanskrit title is Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. Vibhaga means to differentiate. So the yoga which differentiates the effects of gunas, the three gunas, the good mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. Then this is basically the material nature. So we will just summarize a little from this. Before that, just a bit of understanding about this story. So from this story, we can understand the importance of sadhana, daily reciting scripture or daily chanting the holy names of the Lord. So this kind of devotional activities are very, very powerful, and they purify the consciousness. They develop bhakti, not only for ourselves, but it also benefits anyone who also comes in contact with such pure devotees. And it also instructs the importance of taking a guru also. So we can understand that how the disciple became purified quickly by the grace of his guru. And we also can understand about the intricacies of karma. We hear a little bit about how karma is so complex, and yet it is so perfect. Everything is balanced. So just like how the Brahmana previously killed the wife had a chance to have her revenge. So every activity or every act is accounted for, and this kind of things is basically universal justice, which is very carefully captured. Can't escape from it. Every small aspect of it is recorded. So therefore, and it's only with great fortune if someone is able to come across a pure devotee. So therefore, we should try our best to look for that pure devotee. That's the reason we go for yatras, to go to spiritual places. Because usually pure devotees will like to go to spiritual places of pilgrimage where the Lord's pastimes are presented. And there we can take advantage of serving them, of hearing from them, right? So this is the main point. The point is to seek out such a pure devotee of the Lord who can act as someone who can give blessings and who can be our guru. So that is the goal of life. So by that, one can be freed from the cycle of birth and death. All right, so now we go to chapter 14, right? We do a bit of summary of this chapter, what we have discussed previously. Oops, okay. All right, so here we want to understand the material nature, how it works and everything. So this chapter talks about it to some extent. It introduces more deeply. So it begins with a question by Arjuna. So Arjuna will ask, sorry, it doesn't begin with a question. It begins with Krishna telling how this knowledge, so he says here, again I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection. So what knowledge is he talking about? He's talking about the knowledge. Chapter 14 is more practical. Previously, we have understood the goal and then the direction of what we need to do, the yoga process, right? Whereas chapter 14, it gives a bit more understanding about material nature. What are the things we need to overcome in this material nature? So, Prakriti Jnana. Prakriti Jnana means the knowledge of material nature, material energy. So, we are all caught in this material energy. So, it is definitely helpful for us to know the type of problems we will meet in this, the nature of this material energy, how it works. So that's what it all. So by understanding the nature of this material energy and how it works, we can understand how we can get out of it. So therefore, Prakriti Jnana, knowledge of material energy for Param Gatim, to attain the ultimate abode. So this is basically what chapter 14 is about. So Krishna is saying, this knowledge of material nature, by understanding this carefully, many sages in the past have attained supreme perfection. And then he goes on to talk about what is this knowledge or jnana, what is considered jnana in the first place. So we will talk about that. So this was basically discussed in chapter 13, previous chapter. So I'll just do a bit of recap again, and from there we will move on to what we are going to discuss in chapter 14. So previously in chapter 13, it talked about, we wanted to define what all is considered knowledge. So in the beginning, there is the Lord, Purusha. Purusha means enjoyer, Param Purusha, or supreme enjoyer. So this is the Supreme Lord. And he has two types of energies. One energy is spiritual energy. Actually, that's the main energy. The spiritual energy is called Antaranga Shakti. And this spiritual energy it has many different categories. So one of those category is called the Jiva, the living entity. So we are part and parcel of the Lord. At the same time, we are also a spark of his energy. Just like sparks of fire. So we have fire, Krishna, the Purusha is the fire, and we have sparks around the fire. So that spark is like the living entity. Many small fire sparks all around. Now, the position of this Jiva is to become Dasa. Dasa means servant. It's basically to serve the Supreme Lord. That is his position. But the Lord doesn't force this servitude upon the Jiva. So the Jiva has free choice. He has free will. He can either choose to accept seva, and this seva is not an ordinary seva. It is actually the highest perfection for that Jiva. It is his natural situation. By performing this activity, he gets transcendental pleasure and bliss. So it is a very, very special relationship, right, of Purusha and Dasha, not an ordinary material one. It's a very, very sweet, wonderful, wondrous relationship. Now, sometimes this Dasa, this Jiva, if he doesn't develop bhakti, if he does not develop bhakti for the Supreme Lord, sometimes he may fall prey to trying to enjoy in the same way as the Supreme Lord. He develops envy. He wants to also enjoy in the same way that the Supreme Lord is enjoying. He said, I don't want to be servant. I want to be Purusha. But the Jiva can never be Purusha because that's not his nature. But still he may develop that desire. And the Lord, being the Supreme Lord, all-powerful, he can do anything. So if the Jiva wants to try to be the Lord, right? So Krishna says, okay, you cannot be the Lord in the spiritual world, because in the spiritual world, every energy, everything is working around me, concentrated around me. So it's not possible. So therefore, you need to go to a different place. Just like when the fire is there, the spark has no value. Nobody will say the spark is so bright, because the fire is next to the spark. When the fire is next to the spark doesn't really become bright compared to the fire. So, but if the fire is removed from the spark, then the spark it takes center stage. The spark becomes the center stage. When the fire is no longer there, then the spark becomes, people will start looking at the spark. So therefore, this Purusha, this Jiva, who wants to be Purusha, he cannot be Purusha in the spiritual world, because the fire of the Supreme Lord is so effulgent everywhere that there is no place for the Jiva to shine individually, independently. So therefore, he needs to go to a different place. So he needs to go to a new Kshetra. Kshetra means the place. We discussed this previously in chapter 13. And this Kshetra has to be in a place of separate from the spiritual energy. So if the spiritual energy is all effulgent, the opposite of that is the material energy, all darkness. That's why outer space is dark, right? All darkness. So it is basically a reflection of the spiritual energy. So here, the Jiva, the spark, can become bright over here. He can take center stage or try to be the Purusha in this area, the material energy. So Krishna's energy, he has material energy, and this material energy is called Prakriti. And this Prakriti creates this material universe. And this material universe becomes the Kshetra, the place for the Jiva to come. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, right? The Jiva, however, is spirit. He is spirit. He is not matter. He is made up of the same material as Krishna is made of. Same, both also are spirit. So if he wants to come to Prakriti, which is made out of date matter, earth, water, fire, air, ether, it's gross, right? So he needs special equipment, because otherwise he cannot interact with Prakriti, because he's spirit. Spirit cannot mix with matter. So in order for it to mix with matter, right, therefore the false ego is created, which ties the Jiva, and a special material body is created here. So nature is said to be the cause of all material cause and effects, whereas living entity is the cause of the various sufferings. So what happens? This Jiva comes into this material world. He takes a material body, is basically stuffed into the material body, and then he performs various activities. And these various activities are actually carried out by the material energy only, because the Jiva is spirit. He has nothing to do with the material energy. But because it is done by his desire, Therefore, he has to bear the consequences. So the consequences are either good karma or bad karma. So in this way, he gets trapped in the cycle of karma, which continues, the reactions continue life after life. So this is what happens. So basically, the material nature, this creation, material energy has three nature: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So in this way, it rotates the living entity which is caught in the material body, trying to enjoy the material universe, right? He also absorbs the quality of the material universe, which is goodness, passion, and ignorance. So he acts in this way. So acting in this way, goodness, passion, and ignorance, and he goes through various species of life because he's bound by the cycle of karma. And as he goes through different life, he develops different impressions or vasanas, memories, impressions, understanding, a type of thinking. So with this vasanas, he develops desires. Now this experiences, memory, and desire is brought with the soul life after life through the subtle body. Mind, intelligence, and ego. These three, mind, intelligence, and ego, forms the subtle body, which carries the soul from one gross body to another gross body at death. And it carries all these desires, impressions, all this comes with them. And at the same time, bound by the cycle of karma. So according to what he deserves, he will get a type of body, a type of destiny laid out for him for his life, where he can continue to perform new activities and continue to satisfy his desires and create new impressions, and in this way get more desires, and then in this way the cycle goes on and on and on and on. So the living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with the material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. So this is all recap. I'm just bringing us back to perspective because 2 weeks we didn't have a session, so we might have forgotten. So I'm just recapping this from the previous chapter 13. So therefore, we are now discussing, so we know Purusha, the Supreme Lord, the Jiva, the conditioned Jiva who thinks he's Purusha, and he has come to the Prakriti, and then he has taken the three modes of nature, and in this way he interacts. Now, one who knows all of these properly, all of these things, the Supreme Lord, the Jiva, material nature, all of this is called Brahman. They are ultimately made out of the same material. Though Prakriti is called matter, it is gross matter, right? It is basically a transformation of spirit only, because ultimately this energy is also coming from Krishna, and Krishna is all spiritual. So though Prakriti is dead matter, right? It's earth, water, fire, air, ether. So, there's no consciousness in it. It's basically a shadow of the spiritual energy. But because it's a shadow of the spiritual energy, it's ultimately coming from the spiritual energy. So therefore, all of these, the Lord, the Jiva, they are both pure spirit, and Prakriti, which is a transformation of spirit. So ultimately, all of them together are all spirit. So therefore, the word is called Brahman. They are all called Brahman together. So when in Vedic literature, when someone says Brahman, Brahman can have multiple meanings. Brahman can mean spirit, Atma of the Jiva. Brahman can also mean the Supreme Lord. Brahman can also mean material nature. So this is what we have to understand. Now, how do we know which one is which? Then we have to look at the context of the verse. Which one are they talking about? So that's how Sanskrit works. One word may have 12 meanings. So there is something called context, which needs to be checked. So all of this one who knows all of these, all of these things is called knowledge, jnana. This is what is called knowledge. One knows spirit, one knows matter, one knows the difference between spirit and matter and how it works, and one knows the source of spirit and matter, which is the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So knowing these three properly, this is what is called real jnana. Anything else, it's not jnana. So, and one who develops the eyes to see all of these is called Kshetranya. Kshetranya means the person who, due to purification and due to knowledge, he has developed the eye, the vision to be able to understand and see all this. Right? So there's a verse in 1335. Kshetra Kshetranyayor evam antaram jnana chaksusa bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param. Basically, it says those with the eyes of knowledge see the difference between the body and the knower of the body. And he can also understand the process. By understanding this knowledge, he can understand the process of liberation, moksham, bhuta prakriti moksham. So by understanding this knowledge thoroughly, he can ultimately attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So this is basically the understanding. So having understood the bigger picture in chapter 13, today in chapter 14, we will focus on the prakriti alone, just material nature alone, how to understand material nature. Because by understanding material nature, we can take the step of developing liberation, right? So this is what we are going to talk about in chapter 14, prakriti. So it will talk about how this prakriti develops and how it creates the material universe, and how the jiva gets the body to interact in this material universe. Okay, so so once again, just a bit of recap. So the Supreme Lord, right? He is Bhagavan. He is called Parameshwara, the Lord of everything, and he is the source of all energies. Now, many types of energies are there, but as I said before, his energies can be categorized into what broadly we can call as spiritual energy and material energy. Just remember what I said just now, spiritual energy and material energy. So spiritual energy is called Antaranga Shakti. Antaranga means within. Antar means within. So that's called spiritual energy. And there are many types of spiritual energy the Lord possesses. One of this, a splinter of this spiritual energy of the Lord, and a part and parcel of the Lord also, is what we all are, the jivas, the jiva atma. All the jiva atmas, they are all one type of spiritual energy of the Lord. Now, the difference between spirit and matter is spirit has consciousness. Everything has consciousness there, whereas matter doesn't have consciousness. So we are all jivas and we are part of this spiritual energy. Now, as I said before also, this spiritual energy is all effulgent, right? Coming from the effulgence of the Lord. So the shadow of this spiritual energy, right? If the spiritual energy were to cast a shadow, that shadow is known as the material energy. So it's like the Lord's back. The front of the Lord is all bright. His face, everything is seen and everything. But behind the Lord, as he turns his back, everything is dark. So the shadow of this spiritual energy is the Bahiranga Shakti, material energy. And it is based on absence of light. So therefore, if this jiva wants to enjoy as Purusha, which is not his actual position, he cannot shine within this region. So that's the reason he has to go to the material energy, the region of darkness. There he can shine a little, try to shine. So to know all this is called, again, This is all Brahman. The spiritual Jiva is Brahman. Material energy coming from the spiritual energy is also Brahman. And the Supreme Lord is also Brahman. But sometimes the Supreme Lord is also called Para-Brahman, just to create a distinct difference between Brahman and Para-Brahman. Now, how does this Lord use this Bahiranga Shakti, this material energy? Bahiranga means external. Antaranga means internal. So internal energy of the Lord is the spiritual energy. External energy of the Lord is called the material energy, or also known as the shadow energy of the Lord. Now we can try to understand. In the beginning, before you, the Lord actually, he doesn't associate with this shadow energy. He has nothing to do with it. He's basically everything involved with this, because he's spirit, effulgence is spirit. He's basically involved directly with his spiritual energy only. But as I said, for the purpose of creation, the material energy, the creation in this material universe, right? Therefore, the material energy is used. So in the beginning, this material energy is dormant. It's not used. It's dormant. It lies dormant, altogether inert. No, it's just like a inert shadow, not used. So we can understand a little by this example of an acorn. You know, an acorn. Acorn is a type of a seed which comes in a tree. And from this acorn, a new tree can sprout out of it. Now, if you get an acorn, this acorn, if you keep it in a tight container or inside a fridge or something, or in a plastic in a dark place, without water, without light, what will happen? This acorn can remain as an acorn for indefinite period of time. It may remain that way for a long period of time. Nothing will happen. Acorn will remain acorn. But if this acorn is suddenly introduced to sunlight and humidity, then what happens? Something starts to change inside the acorn. We cannot see it. You may bring the acorn towards sunlight and towards moisture. We will see day by day the acorn looks the same only. But actually inside the acorn, there are changes happening already. It is now activated by the presence of sunlight and due to the presence of moisture. So it becomes activated, you know, the acorn will start germinating inside. So as it germinates, it starts germinating, but we cannot see anything happening outside. So it is changing inside, but we can't see the effect outside. So this is a second stage. Then what happens? Then suddenly we see the acorn starts to sprout. Now we can see the differentiation. Not only it's differentiating inside, we can also see it. It starts to manifest, right? And as it manifests, it starts with three things, right? The three modes of nature. So from there, it manifests, it differentiates, until this simple sprout is no longer just a single sprout. It becomes the complex, full complex tree, right? So this is how material universe, the material creation is also created. So in the beginning, this material energy of the Lord, in its dormant state, it's called by the Sanskrit term pradhan. So when it's not used, it is dormant, the shadow, right? It's called pradhan. Now this pradhan is unmanifested, just like the acorn. You cannot see anything outside happening. And it is also inert. Nothing is happening inside also. Undifferentiated, no changes happening within. So it's totally in inert situation. So this is called pradhan. It's kind of like the scientists like to talk about the Big Bang theory, right? The scientists have a theory that the universe was created by the Big Bang. In the beginning, there was nothing, and this nothing was just a single tiny concentrated point in a period of time and place Everything was just in that point of infinite mass and density, but it's nothing. Nothing was there. And then suddenly, this nothing exploded, and then it created the entire universe. This is the scientists' theories of the Big Bang. But why it exploded, how it exploded, that they don't know. So it's nothing. It's not a very unique theory, because our Vedic scriptures also talk about the same point. So this beginning, this nothing in the beginning is called Pradhan. It's not nothing, it is something. It's just that people don't know it because it is unmanifested and undifferentiated. You can't see it, there's no change also inside. Now, suddenly, this Pradhan will change to become Prakriti. What is Prakriti? Just like how the acorn becomes energized by the sun and the water, differentiation starts to happen. So now from unmanifested, it becomes manifested, Prakriti, right? But still not differentiated. You can't see anything happening, right? It's now energized. The acorn is now not the same as before. Prakriti is not the same as Pradhan, because Pradhan is not energized. Prakriti is energized, right? And because it's energized, it's now visible, manifested already. And as it goes on to differentiate, as it goes on to differentiate, then it becomes known as what is called Mahatattva. So what is Mahatattva? Mahatattva is finally the universe, the full development. So this is how it works. In the beginning, material energy is unmanifested. Then it becomes manifested, right? And as it becomes manifested, it goes on to differentiate and differentiate and differentiate and create and form the various different things in the material creation. So this is how it works. So what causes this sudden energization? We will talk about that in a while. So this Mahatattva is created. This Mahatattva is basically the definition of this entire material universes, all the creation in this material universe. Now, the purpose of this Mahatattva is to give us a playground for the jivas to enjoy, separate from Krishna, right? So in this playground, there are attractions. What are these attractions? So therefore, the Lord creates in the Mahatattva the sense objects of the senses, which are like our playthings within this material universe. The form, the sound, the smell, the taste, and the touch. These are the things that we want to enjoy, right? The jivas come to this material world. They want to enjoy these things, the form, the sound, the smell, the taste, and touch. But the jiva is spirit, whereas the sense objects are material. So spirit cannot interact with material unless there is some help. So therefore, the sense objects, the material sense objects are created. These are called in Sanskrit, known as tanmatras, the 5 tanmatras. They are created to actually attract the jiva, because that's what they want to do. So in order to enjoy this tanmatras or the sense objects, the Lord tells the Mahatattva, this material energy, to create a suitable body to host the soul inside. Because soul is spirit, spirit cannot directly interact. So the soul or the spirit must enter into a suitable body which will allow it to interact with this. So since sense objects are material, body also has to be material. So therefore, it begins with the gross elements, the Panchabhuta, earth, water, fire, air, ether. These will combine in various ways, and it will create the jnana indriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. And just knowledge acquiring senses is not enough, because we want to interact. We don't want to only receive information. We want to also interact with it. So the working senses are also created, right? So voice, legs, hands, the anus, the genitals. So these are all created to facilitate the jiva. So in a body which is made out of this, right? This is like the outer shell of the body, the gross body, right? The jiva, the soul, has to be trapped inside this. Then only he can interact. But the material body cannot trap the gross material body cannot trap the jiva. So how to keep the body trapped inside? So therefore, the subtle material body is created. The subtle material body is made out of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Now, the main thing which is trapping the jiva inside is the false ego. Ahamkara. This is called ahamkara. The sense that I am the enjoyer, I am the person, the sense of I, right? So that is a very strong thing which keeps the person within this material universe. So you could say ultimately spiritual knowledge is to understand our real ego, not our false identification. We think we are this body, we think I am so and so, I am Mr. whatever, I am Dr. whatever, I have this much of education, this is my amount of money, this is my amount, this is my family, this is my society. So my. So this is all false ego. So this false ego keeps us trapped. This is the one that traps the jiva. And it is also given intelligence to drive the false ego, because the jiva wants to enjoy. So material intelligence is created to facilitate the enjoyment of this jiva. And this same intelligence also can help us to free ourselves from this false ego. Depends on how you use it, whether or not it's purified. At the same time, mind or manas is also created. Mind is where the impressions, the memories, the desires take birth. All of these things are trapped in the mind. So together, mind, intelligence, and false ego is what is called the subtle body, or the sukshma sarira, the subtle body. This subtle body traps the soul inside, and together with the soul and the subtle body, it is stuffed inside this gross body, right? And in this way, the jiva can interact with the sense objects. Now, when the jiva dies, the gross body is destroyed, but the subtle body still traps the soul, and it moves to a new gross body, takes new birth, and then again it enjoys, and then it dies, and then again the subtle body. So the subtle body never changes. The gross body keeps changing, but the subtle body goes from one body to another body to another body, carrying the soul. Just like how Bhagavad Gita gives the example, just like how the breeze carries the fragrance. You cannot see the breeze, you cannot see the fragrance. So if the fragrance is the soul, the breeze is the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego. It carries the breeze to the nose, right? From the object of the fragrance to the nose. So in this way, it happens. So this is the working behind how it works. So this is all described very nicely in Bhagavad Gita chapter 14. So again, in other words, in the Bahiranga Shakti, in the material energy, Pradhan, in the beginning, unmanifested, it's called Pradhan, right? And then it becomes energized. And then this energized Pradhan is now called Prakriti. And now this Prakriti goes on to differentiate. So this Jiva is stuffed into this Prakriti. And together, and how does this happen? How does this Pradhan becomes energized? So it is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that this Pradhan becomes energized when the Lord glances over it. So the Lord is very wonderful. He simply has to glance. Simply throwing his glance at something, he can impregnate Prakriti with all the Jiva. This is his power. So Prakriti is shadow, material energy. And the Lord, the Supreme Lord Vishnu, he has nothing to do with the material energy. So therefore, because the Lord is always spiritual, he doesn't have anything to do with the material energy. So how can he impregnate the material energy? So therefore, by glancing at material energy, right? By glancing at material energy, that glance is carried by his expansion. So the Lord expands himself in that glance and becomes what is known as Lord Shiva. So this is how Lord Shiva expands from Lord Vishnu. This is in the beginning, before even Brahma is created, right? So in this way, Lord Shiva associates with Durga, and in this way, the jivas are born. So therefore, it is described sometimes that Lord Shiva and Lord Shiva and Durga Devi or Parvati are the father and mother of this material creation, because or the father and mother of this, of all the jivas, of all the conditioned jivas, the conditioned jivas. But the jivas are not coming from Shiva and Parvati. They were already before this coming from Lord Vishnu. They were injected from Lord Vishnu. He throws the glance at Durga, material energy, and that glance is basically Lord Shiva. And in this way, Lord Shiva interacts with Mother Parvati, and the jivas are injected inside the womb of Mother Parvati, and therefore they get the material body made out of the three modes of material nature. Just like how the child takes the nature of the mother, right? The child takes the nature of the father and the mother, right? The father is spiritual, the spirit comes from father, but the nature of the mother is the three modes: goodness, passion, ignorance. So in this way, they are conditioned. This is how the jiva becomes conditioned in this material world. So then, by the glance of Mahavishnu upon material energy, upon Pradhan, Prakriti is generated, energized. And this Lord, from the glance of Mahavishnu, Lord Shiva carries this glance. He expands himself from Lord Vishnu and carries this glance and then interacts with Mother Parvati. And in this way, the jivas are inserted inside. They take birth in this material universe. And this is how it works. So this is described in detail in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but in the Bhagavad Gita, this is hinted also. Okay, so to understand this properly, so in other words, Lord Shiva is an expansion of Lord Vishnu, but Lord Shiva is not the same as Lord Vishnu. He's an expansion, but there is a difference. Because Lord Vishnu is fully in the mode of good, Suddha Sattva. He doesn't interact with the three modes of nature. But Mother Parvati is Prakriti energy, right? The shadow energy. So he doesn't interact directly. He always interacts with the spiritual energy, Lakshmi. So in order to interact with the material energy, he expands himself as Lord Shiva. He accepts the three modes of nature. He accepts the three modes of nature, not as Vishnu, but as Shiva. So the understanding given is just like milk and yogurt. The acharyas explain. Now, from milk, you can get yogurt. What happens? Milk mixed with culture becomes yogurt, right? So therefore, Lord Vishnu, expansion of Lord Vishnu plus three modes of material nature, which is the culture, you get Lord Shiva, right? And though yogurt comes from milk, but it is not the same as milk. You can't use yogurt in the same way as milk is used, right? So, and you cannot get milk back from yogurt. You can get yogurt from milk, but you cannot get milk from yogurt, right? So therefore, Lord Vishnu can become Lord Shiva, but Lord Shiva cannot become Lord Vishnu. So he's a separated expansion, an eternally separated expansion, separate from Lord Vishnu, known as Shiva Tattva. So in this way, Lord Vishnu, he impregnates the jivas from the spiritual world into the womb of material nature. So Bhagavad Gita chapter 14, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature. So material nature is Durga. But I am the original seed-giving father. Originally, all jivas come from Vishnu. But they come through Vishnu and they go through and go through Lord Shiva as transformation. And in this way, they are injected inside the womb of Mother Parvati. So therefore, Lord Shiva and Parvati are known as the father and the mother of this conditioned jiva. But the father of the jiva who is not conditioned is Lord Vishnu. So it says here, Bhagavad Gita, right? The moment the jiva chooses to be conditioned, at that time, Lord Vishnu expands himself as Lord Shiva, and he injects the jivas who want to be conditioned into the womb of Mother Parvati. And in this way, we take birth in various species of life within this material creation. Right? So this is also the symbol of Lord Shiva, right? Lord Shiva shows the union. This symbol is the union between the male and the female, right? So it represents the union between Shiva and Shakti, and in this way creates the jivas in this material creation. So I hope that is understandable, right? So basically, chapter 14 Bhagavad Gita, it talks about how material nature is developed, how it starts from Pradhan to Prakriti to Mahatattva. It differentiates in this way. So all this is understood. And then it goes on after that to talk in more detail about the nature of these three modes. So Mother Durga, right? So the three modes of nature, which are the three modes, it talks more in detail about them. So what are the three modes? So this is material three modes. The mode of goodness, Sattva, the mode of passion, Rajas, and the mode of ignorance, Tamas. So this is a summary of all these three modes, which is discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14. All these three modes, remember the word guna, guna is the three modes, right? Three guna. The word guna means quality. Quality of goodness, quality of passion, quality of ignorance. But at the same time, the word guna also means rope, to tie. It's interesting, isn't it? So the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion, and the mode of goodness also all act as ropes to tie us down in this material creation. So what are the binding force? Here it gives in detail all the different binding forces of the three. So ignorance, what ties us down? Sleep, laziness, madness, all this keeps us tied up, difficult to escape. One who is having all these things, it's very hard for them to come out of it. What is the binding force of the mode of passion? Attachment, extreme attachment to fruitive activities and also to material relations, material relationships, very much attachment, or extreme hatred, these two. Ropes of desire and attachment. What is the binding force in the mode of goodness? Goodness also can bind us, because one can become complacent, one can become conditioned by general happiness, by satisfaction, by knowledge, by a sense of superiority that they are better off than other people. So these things will make them complacent, and they may not want to search after self-realization. So therefore, we have to understand the binding force of all three. So what are the characteristics? Goodness is known as knowledge, illuminating, and one who is in the mode of goodness, he doesn't sin. He performs only good karma, usually. But the problem with the three modes is they are not stable. They keep changing. You cannot remain always in the mode of goodness. Suddenly it may change to the mode of passion, then it may go to the mode of ignorance. So that's the problem. So that's why we don't want to remain in the mode of goodness only. We want to transcend the mode of goodness. And what's the result of the mode of goodness? We get piety, we get knowledge, and we take birth in heavenly bodies, in good places, higher regions. One who dies in the mode of goodness, if somebody dies in the mode of goodness, his destination are the higher regions, heavenly regions. Not spiritual region, but heavenly regions, right? He cannot escape from the cycle of birth and death simply by being in the mode of goodness. He needs to transcend them. Then we have the mode of passion, right? Intense, unlimited desires and longings. We already mentioned this. And someone who dies, the mode of passion always results in misery and greed. So nowadays, Kali Yuga, the word passion is the key word now. Everything is talking about passion, passion, passion. But ultimately, the understanding of what passion will bring us, passion will only bring us to misery and greed. That's it. You have to understand this. Worst of all is ignorance. No? Characteristic is delusion, darkness, madness, inertia. And the result is only further ignorance, further madness, further illusion, and one sinks down to lower planets and hellish planets. So these are the three modes, and their binding force, the characteristics, and the results. So it's important to know how we are bound within these three modes in this material creation. So they act like a, like how they are always, these are the three modes which are always affecting our life. So understanding this is very important. Why? Because we want to, as much as possible, avoid the mode of ignorance and passion. The lower modes, we want ignorance, we want to completely avoid. Passion, occasionally, but then we want to eventually come to the mode of goodness only. And from the mode of goodness, we can achieve transcendence. We cannot achieve transcendence from the mode of passion. It's very difficult. It will naturally, if we remain in the mode of passion has a natural attraction to the mode of ignorance. It brings us down. It's like a current in the river, which carries us towards the dangerous places. So that's the nature of the mode of passion. It may look very interesting, exciting, but it will bring us towards mode of ignorance. So you have to be very, very careful. So we have to remain situated in the mode of goodness, and from the mode of goodness, we can transcend. Now, there are two ways to do this. One is the artificial, mechanical way of the jnana path, right? You know, the karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, meditation, and all that. And the other is the path of bhakti, which naturally, simply by following the path of bhakti and understanding this knowledge, the path of bhakti will purify our heart from within, destroy the mode of ignorance, destroy the mode of passion, and automatically, naturally bring us to the mode of goodness. We don't have to externally try, right? So that is the advantage of the mode of the bhakti path. Okay, so understanding this, we come to this Bhagavad Gita 14:20. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So this is the goal, right? And what will happen when he's able to be free? How do we know who is free from the three modes? So therefore, the description of the Sthita Prajna, one who is free of the three modes, is also given so that we don't get cheated by people who falsely claim that they are, liberated and all that. So Bhagavad Gita gives us all the guidelines. One who does not hate the modes and qualities. He understands the modes, he understands the qualities, he doesn't hate them. One who is unwavering and undisturbed. That means he is always beyond the three modes. He doesn't get disturbed. His motivation and his aim and goal doesn't change, no matter what situation. He remains neutral and transcendental, beyond, doesn't take sides.
One who knows that the modes alone are active. He has full knowledge to understand what works behind all these things. One who is equipoised, who is undisturbed, one who sees with equal vision. He is able to see divinity in everyone and within himself. So this is something which cannot be imitated. This is what some people misunderstand. They artificially try to imitate this. Cannot. This is something which comes, the Kshetra Jnana, the knowledge of this vision it comes at a certain level of practice of devotional, of yoga. So that is one thing. And one who is renounced of material activities. So he doesn't do anything he does, whatever he does is not material. So some people will say, I am liberated and all that, but then they come and do material activities. They don't have higher goal. So a devotee may look like he's doing service, just like Arjuna. Arjuna is fighting. Krishna says fight. But his fighting is not material because he's fighting to please Krishna. So that is devotional service, is yoga, not for his own purposes. He's doing it for Krishna's purpose. So that becomes spiritual. So that's the difference. Okay, so then we have this how to come out of these three modes easily. So Krishna tells us how to do that. Very important verse. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman, free of the three modes, right? So what's the condition? Full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances. So we have to slowly teach ourselves, practice until we develop our faith to this level, right? Then we can automatically free of our three modes of material nature. Just like the story of how Narada changed the Mrigari the hunter, right? Mrigari the hunter, very low person, mode of ignorance. But such a person in the mode of ignorance also, simply by following the process of bhakti, he was completely transformed within a short period of time. Right? So we can, and we also see in recent times, Prabhupada also, he went to the West, to the lowest of society, hippies. They were indulging in drugs, in sex, in meat eating, in all kinds of things. He was simply chanting there amongst them. And within 1 year, he was able to convert the hippies into happies, into devotees, completely leaving all these bad habits, following the 4 regulative principles, initiated, and still going strong in spiritual life. So the devotional practice is very, very powerful. And then finally, Krishna says, last verse, even if you come to the path of Brahman, even if you attain Brahman, understand that this Brahman is coming from me only. I am the Parabrahman. I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So the devotees know this, and they go beyond Brahman. They want to worship the Parabrahman. They serve the Supreme Lord in his direct form, directly. Okay, so that is basically chapter 14. Very interesting chapter, very detailed chapter. We can read through it carefully. We can understand the details of the various points which are raised. So let's give food to the soul as well. Food for the body, which is made out of material nature, but we also need to give food for the soul. Remember, we are soul trapped within this subtle body, trapped within the material body, the material gross body. Both are material, subtle and gross. The subtle body travels with us even after death. The gross body, we leave it behind. But we need to be free of both the material body, subtle and gross. And the path to do that is to give food to the soul, to strengthen the faith. Now, faith is not ordinary. It is transcendental. It is coming from the spiritual world. And the way to strengthen it is to give food. How to do that? Hearing and chanting. Right? So, therefore, let us chant together. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining me in this session. Are there any questions before we close? All right. So there are no questions. That's fine. So if there are any questions, feel free to type in the chat or put it in the WhatsApp, and we can reply. No problem. Also, this Thursday, we will have Srimad Bhagavatam session. I will share the link. If you are free, you can join us Thursday at 8 o'clock. Thank you. I'll see you all again. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Sri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.